Go live to Canberra now. Minister Matt Canavan joins us. Matt Canavan, thank you for your time. First, if I could get to the MH17 issue, this has been 5 long years for these families, these Australian families in particular. The wheels of justice obviously turn slowly. How optimistic are you that justice will prevail?
Well, what I know, Laura, is that we'll be unceasing as the Australian government in seeking to achieve justice for the 38 Australian victims in this crime against humanity. It does take time, of course, investigating something as unusual as this, and where I'm sure not always there is full cooperation from all officials, but the Australian government has pursued this strongly. We have allocated $50 million towards helping the Dutch prosecution progress, and I welcome and it's good to see progress on that front. We've always worked very cooperatively with the Dutch government on these matters, and I look forward to further action being taken. Does
the government need to manage expectations here, though, for the families? These 4 individuals that Dutch prosecutors want to lay charges against can't be extradited, that have to give themselves up. And is there a chance that they're just made scapegoats and Russia doesn't have to answer for anything?
Well, look, I'll let the officials that are involved in that provide further information, Laura. I'm not myself directly involved. What I want to see is justice done. What the federal government is doing is putting every resource possible towards that outcome. Of course, there can be no guarantees in a case like this, but we have done and will continue to do everything we can to pursue justice on behalf of particularly the friends and loved ones of those families affected, but for all Australians as well.
OK, you spent hours with Centre Alliance on Tuesday. What did you discuss? What did you negotiate?
Well, Laura, the government has been very focused on making sure that we get gas prices here in Australia as in a competitive form as possible. Gas prices have fallen 20% in the last 2 years since we took action to introduce export controls, and what I discussed with Senator Patrick is what the government has been doing, the effects of that, and a broad discussion about what we can do in the future. I have discussed these matters with Senator Patrick before. I respect his strong commitment to see sustainable manufacturing exist in this country, and to do that we must have competitive gas prices, and that's what we're very focused on delivering. So
are you looking at strengthening that gas trigger and a domestic gas reserve? So
the Australian government, as I said, have taken significant action in the last 2 years. We have a review soon into the effectiveness of that mechanism. As I said, it has led to a 20% reduction in gas prices. In the last 2 years, gas prices have been lower than in Asia here in Australia, significantly lower, about 18% lower on average, and they've been lower in 17 of the last 23 months, so always over the last 2 years. Now, that's changed in the first 6 months of this year, principally because of lower global gas prices. Australian gas prices have stayed largely stagnant, but there has been the emergence of significant gas from new LNG trains in the United States. That has lowered gas prices. Now, we haven't seen the effect of that yet, but what I did say at the National Gas Conference last month was that the Australian government expects a functioning market to occur, and in a functioning market, gas prices in Australia should track down those global gas prices over time, even though we don't get the direct access of that gas. So that's what I want to see happen in our markets, and we stand ready to take whatever actions necessary, of course, to deliver competitive prices to Australian consumers and make sure we protect Australian jobs.
Well, what does that mean? Do you need a gas reserve per se?
So look, that question has been one that is going to come up in the years to come. We don't want to see what happened years ago. Back in 2012, the 6 LNG trains in Gladstone were approved without consideration of the impact on domestic gas fields. That was done under a former Labor government, but we've got to look forward now and think about when we next perhaps develop large gas resources in Australia, what framework we have in place to ensure that Australians benefit from such a development directly in terms of jobs and manufacturing. And I've said this many times before, and last year we signed a memorandum of understanding with the Northern Territory government that we'd work together on ensuring that any gas developed there does provide benefits to Australian consumers. So We've got what we need here. We've put export controls in place for our existing gas production. What we do need to consider is how, in the future, when gas is developed, we make sure that Australian businesses, Australian jobs are put first.
Well, how do you guarantee that? Because Senator Rex Patrick also wants these guarantees in order to pass the tax package. So what did you tell him yesterday, and was he satisfied?
Well, just to be clear, I spoke to Senator Patrick about the domestic gas security mechanism and the domestic gas market situation. That's my role, my responsibility. The matters around tax negotiations, the tax change package being put forward by the government is not a matter for me. It's a matter for other ministers to progress. But I'm, of course, keen to work with all Australian parliamentarians to see good outcomes in Australian gas markets. We will approach this as we have done the last 2 years, in a methodical way, diligent way, a sensible way, but one that puts Australian jobs first. That's our focus. Okay. That's what we've been elected to do, and I'll stay focused on that. Of course, in terms of tax packages, all of Senator Patrick's views, of course, would be moot if the Labor Party just respected the Australian people.
Well, I'll get to that in a moment. Just quickly on this gas issue, though, are you saying that you are going to wait till that scheduled review and you'll look at it then? And when is that review?
So the review is due next year. One thing, of course, that we're considering is, given the change in global gas markets I mentioned before, what we need to do now to make sure that Australia is not left behind. And I mentioned that last month at as I said, the National Gas Conference. So, as I said, we'll work through these things diligently. Not about to make major policy announcements on Sky News, Laura, as much as you'd like me to do. But our objectives are clear. Our intent has always been transparent. We will make sure we continue to promote investment and development of our gas resources in a way that's consistent with protecting Australian jobs and manufacturing.
OK, looking at the tax cut package, we see Peter Khalil this morning saying that if the government's not going to break up the package, Labor should pass the entire package through the Parliament, provide that pathway. Is there any chance of you breaking up this package to see stages 1 and 2 go through?
Well, that's a matter, obviously, for my colleagues in Treasury and Finance, but what the Australian people want to see is the policies that we took to the election. I think the Australian people want to see a parliament that allows the government to reasonably implement the promises that it made at an election. I fully respect the process of the Senate and its job to review matters. But I think just weeks after an election, if the Australian Labor Party is to block such a core part of our policy agenda, such a clear benefit to the Australian people, that will be an insult to the Australian people delivered by the Australian Labor Party. They say, the Australian Labor Party since the election have been saying that we've learnt and heard and listened. That's not good enough. We need to actually see action, not just talk. And the way the Australian Labor Party can try and restore faith for the Australian people is to implement these tax changes in full that have been voted for by the Australian people and see those benefits delivered to all Australians.
We're seeing action and work on the Adani Carmichael coal mine that started just a week after those final approvals by the Queensland government. How many people have been immediately hired by Adani to do this work?
My understanding is about 60 people out at Carmichael mine site at the moment doing these early works that have been approved last week. Through the construction phase of the next 2 years, there will be about 1,500 people employed. Obviously, they've got a significant job to ramp up those numbers, and this is just great news. We need jobs in central North Queensland. That's what I've been fighting for years. I often say now I've been fighting to get the Adani mine going for years, and then Bob Brown turned up, and it's getting going in weeks. So how good is Bob Brown? I mean, it's just amazing for Queensland. There's such a boost of confidence in central Queensland. The other week I went around Claremont, Moranbah, Dysart, mining towns in central Queensland, and everybody has a renewed vigour and boost in their step.
When will those
thanks to this project getting going and these jobs starting.
When will those 1,500 jobs become a reality? And is 15 the high water mark? 1,500 the high water mark?
So in construction, that's the peak numbers. Obviously, the precise timetables up to the business project and
so
how that rolls out, how quickly they can employ
next
people.
2
It's a
years,
tough market.
Only 1,500 thereabouts over the next 2 years, and then...
Yeah, only 1,500. Yeah.
Well, no, not only 1,500, but...
Laura,
sure, that's fair enough.
But
I'm just going on the promises...
I know you live in a big city.
I'm just going on the promises that we heard from Adani. So... have you got any idea, now that all those environmental approvals are out of the way, has Adani got a better idea of how many people they might need to employ? Because this is one of the most modern automated mines in the world now. Will be. No. That's a complete furphy. Just pick you up there. Adani has no plans to automate as such the coal mine. That's a lie put out there by green activists. Good luck to them, but. The plans that Adani have are pretty clear, and they've been open about those. It'll be a pretty standard truck and shovel mine with lots of jobs. So yeah, look, I mean, I know when you live in Sydney, you think 1,500 jobs might be a drop in the ocean, but for us in North Queensland, there's nothing else like it, right? Anywhere close. And this is always, it's not just about this mine. For me, it's not been about Adani. I mean, Adani's a vehicle, a means to help develop our nation. We need investment. Back in the 1960s, we had Mitsui and Mitsubishi come here from Japan and help develop coal mines in the Bowen Basin, and that delivered a massive boost to the economic activity and strength of North Queensland, and that's what I want to achieve. So opening up this new mine in a new basin creates the potential for a whole new area of wealth creation for our country and job creation, not just associated with mining. There's other mines that might open up on the back of infrastructure built there, but there's also farming opportunities out in this district. But they're islanded, they're isolated. You can't grow a farm crop, a cash crop, if you don't have a road or a rail line to export it out of. Now they will, once this mine is developed. There are those opportunities. There's lots of small business opportunities on the back of mining opportunities that will come, and the needs that big companies have for cleaners, for caterers, for a whole lot of other services which will flow from this production. That's the jobs and that's the opportunity that I'm passionate about. I love Queensland, even though you are pitting me as a city dweller in Sydney this morning. But how good is Darren Edwards? That's all right, I'll let you have that. But Darren Edwards is probably the Queenslander of the year last night. He's the senior sergeant, senior detective in Maroochydore that tackled mid-press conference. He hasn't lost his instincts. I mean, Australian of the year, surely you can make this happen, Matt Canavan.
Well, look, there's a little bit of evidence there why we dominate Origin. We're going well, so I don't think we need to draft him into the team. But maybe we should bring Knighthoods back, Laura, because that guy's an absolute legend and he deserves all the accolades coming his way.
Ooh, Knighthoods didn't work out for you that well last
Maybe just
time.
for him,
OK. Matt Canavan, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. Cheers.